Hi, I'm Heather from Woolly Elephant. I thought I'd give you a quick tutorial today on how to cast on double pointed needles. I've just finished this one shorty sock, so I'd show you how I cast on the next one. I use, at the moment I'm using Likey 2.25. These are a wooden DPN. Don't know if you can see that. It's hard to see from the angle I'm looking at. And I'm just using some hand-dyed yarn. Merino nylon 4-ply. So I just start off with a slip knot. And I just use one needle to start with. And I cast on all my stitches onto one needle. Just need to get out roughly how much I think I need. So a slip knot onto one needle, and then I do, I'm not sure what kind of stitch do they call this, long tail cast on, and I cast on 64 stitches onto one needle. If you haven't seen that, just hold it through over. So I cast all 64 stitches onto one of the needles. So I'll just do this and then I'll come back to you when I've finished that. Right, that's all 64 stitches cast onto one needle. I would then, I work on 4 needles. You can work on 5, but I like to work on 4. So I need to split them. That's 3 working needles. Split them between 3 needles, and then your 4th one is the one that you knit onto. So I'm going to split the stitches between 3 needles. So 64. That means I'll have 32 on one needle and 16 on the other 2. So how I do that is I slip them. Slip them off one at a time, slip 16 onto the next needle. You can, if you're not all fingers and thumbs like me, you can cast onto the 3 needles, 16 onto one, 32 onto another, as long as you keep them all lined up and held together. But I find that, with my grip not being the greatest, I find that quite difficult to do. So all I'm doing is going under the front of the stitch, that's the bit closest to me, and slipping them off. That makes sure that the stitches are in the right position for when I come to knit. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. So I've got 16 there. Tighten that one up a bit. 16 on that needle. And then I'll count 32 on this one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 30, 31, 32, and then these 16 that are left, you can slip onto another needle. 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm slipping those as if to purl. 6, 7, 8, 9, because it's at the other end. 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. So there we go. So I've got 16 stitches there, 32 stitches here, and another 16 stitches on this needle. Now you need to orient them, your needles, so that just move this along so that this ridge edge is all pointing towards the middle, like that. You can lay that flat on your table if that makes that easier to do that. You can lay them down flat and then you want to make sure nothing's twisted, that they're all facing in the right direction. And as I'm right-handed, my yarn that I'm going to knit with is on the right side near my right hand. Okay, so I'm going to pick those up, slide these ones on this needle, the needle in your left hand towards the end, because they're the ones you're going to knit into first. I knit English style, so the wool is in my right hand, and then just start knitting and purling into this side. The first round is obviously the fiddliest, and I'm just going to knit that. Automatically joins it. When you knit that first stitch, it joins you up. So then I just start knit, purl, knit, purl. And before I go any further, I'm just going to push that needle under that needle, just because I find that a more comfortable knitting position, that's all. And then you would just continue around, purl, knit, purl, knit, purl, knit, purl, knit, purl. Yeah, I'm still right. Knit, purl, knit, purl. I'm just going to go across this one and then tell you when we get to the join. Nearly there. The first round is always the most fiddly to do. Now, you can see there, I didn't pull that tight enough when I moved them across. When I cast them on, I've got a bit of a loose stitch there. I'm going to redo this again in a minute, but just for the purpose of this video, I'm not going to worry it. So that once you've knitted to the end of your first needle, as I have there, you've now got the free needle again. So you turn your work, and then you move and just carry on start knitting on the next needle. Once you get comfortable with this, it's obviously a lot quicker. You just need to make sure that when you knit that first stitch, and especially I tend to do it on the second stitch. On the second stitch, I pull a little bit, pull that second stitch a little bit tighter, so that where you join here, you've not got a trailing a long stitch in the middle, because you don't want to get ladders down your work where the join is in the needles. So the first round I find is always the hardest and the slowest. Finding out how it's comfortable for you to hold. As you can see, I tend to have a finger in the middle of through the hole in the middle, because I find that easiest, and hold these two obviously in my left hand, and I'm constantly letting go and holding on my right needle. So I'll just keep going to the end of the round. So the last couple of stitches there. I always like, when I'm knitting in the round on DPNs, to finish on a purl stitch on the needle, and then knit the next stitch, on the first stitch on the next needle. Tends to look neater, I think, and you get more of an even join. Just in my opinion, you might find different. See, so I'm on the second stitch there, and I always make a conscious effort to pull it in. I find it's less tight if you do it on the second stitch than on the first one. If you do it just on the first one, as you go to knit the second stitch, it can release a bit and slacken off. and you can still get a bit of a ladder, whereas if you do it in the second stitch, it tends to hold the tension better when you pull it in, because you're pulling it through 2 stitches as opposed to just 1. So nearly at the end. That's my last one, purl one. So that's the end. That's the end of the first round. So you would have your tail of your yarn is pointing down. When you're knitting, let's go over ready for the next one. When you're knitting, find you don't need a stitch marker because you've got this yarn tail here, so you can see where the end of the round is, but feel free to put a stitch marker in. So when you go and you knit your next stitch, pull this in on your second stitch again, and that's quite a tight join now, that, and then you can just carry on and just keep going round for the amount of rounds it specifies. And once you get comfortable, it takes a bit to get comfortable using double pointed needles if you haven't used them before, but I was afraid of using them, didn't use them for years, and then somebody showed me how to do it properly and I was away. And now I've tried 9-inch circulars, I've tried magic loop, but my preference is for double pointed needles. I get my best tension on these. You'll find as you're knitting, you're knitting down so that the sock is coming down and the stocking stitch, the smooth side, is on the outside. If you find you're knitting and you've got garter stitch look on the outside, the purl side, don't worry about that, just push your sock, push it back down through. It just means you're going up as opposed to going down. Your knitting's going up that way as opposed to coming down that way, so you just turn it the right way and everything will be fine. Okay.